Welcome to the Global Pulse, a short video series where our experts break down a trending topic in international business and why it matters to you.
In January, the U.S. announced its withdrawal from the two major global climate change and policy organizations, the UN's Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, as well as its withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accords. While the current administration has telegraphed its intent to dramatically reverse course on previous U.S. climate change policy, these latest developments beg the question of what it means for global efforts on climate policy a year after the U.S. withdrawal from the global stage. It's hard to ignore the lack of the United States' presence in any meaningful discussion on climate change policy, given the impact it has as the dominant economic power in the world. Only China, accounting for about 30% of global carbon emissions, sits ahead of the US, that comes in at about 12%, followed by India at 8%, the EU at 6 to 7%, and Russia at 5%. While global climate policy continues to trudge along without US participation, it's hard to imagine that global climate policies can make a material difference on long-run outcomes without the US taking the lead to champion the effort. Unfortunately, climate policy has, like other issues, become polarizing over the years. An overemphasis on economically questionable technologies and policies aimed at abrupt shifts in regulation of certain sectors that impose severe economic consequences on consumers and businesses at large at a time of rising affordability concerns has exacerbated this polarization that is now manifested in the U.S. pullback on climate policy participation. While significant advances in the measurement of various climate-related physical outputs have been made over the last several decades in the scientific community, there remains significant uncertainty over the trajectory of such changes. This is where rational debate over the type and pace of climate-related policy solutions must focus. Without that moderation, actions like those taken by the US will undoubtedly be taken over by other countries and thus weaken global climate policy initiatives. This leaves no middle ground for practical and reasonable solutions to a real global problem. Hyperbolic rhetoric that calls attention to dire outcomes to the planet in the near term does not help the global policy discussion any more than equally concerning rhetoric that climate change is a hoax. The truth lies somewhere in the middle, where good science has empirically shown that humans have materially impacted temperature since the Industrial Revolution. Tamping down such rhetoric from both sides and focusing on a balanced strategy to transition over the long term to a global economy less dependent on fossil fuels that also minimizes economic and societal disruption in the short run would pay dividends toward reducing carbon levels. But mitigating global carbon emissions is a classic tragedy of the commons problem, whereby self-interested parties, in this case nations that operate individually to exploit a common resource such as the atmosphere to their economic, political, and societal advantage. The U.S. withdrawal from being a leader on the global stage on climate policy signals a go-it-alone strategy that unfortunately other countries can use by example to also pull back from meaningful contributions to climate change. Several of the highest carbon-producing countries that still participate in global climate forums have fallen off track in meeting their carbon goals, and at a time of hyper competition, both economically and militarily, among a handful of major powers, the U.S. withdrawal from global climate policy stands as a signal to other countries that taking a step back may be in their individual best interest as well. Such a pullback, even if done silently without a formal withdrawal, would set back global climate frameworks for many years. Such an unfortunate outcome for climate policy is a lesson for policymakers and advocates alike that imposing hard-nosed and abrupt changes on consumers and businesses without solid empirical data to back that up can lead to worse outcomes. A moderate approach to tackling global environmental challenges will pay off much more in the long run than scary rhetoric from opposite sides of the climate debate.